Hi, I'm Bly, watercolor artist and mom of 6. My passions are people, paint, and petals. Please join me from my kitchen table where I teach you fun watercolor skills so that you can incorporate this creative hobby into your own busy life. Hello everybody. So today we are going to paint this daisy floral, and we're going to use masking fluid to save the whites of our flowers. And that is what is in this little bottle here. So actually before we do that, we're going to mix our colors. So you should have 4 colors in the palette that I sent you: the turquoise, the green, the yellow, and then this deep plum color. And we are going to practice mixing a couple different combinations of those. So with your green brush that I sent, I want you to swatch out, I'm going to use the back of this, the plain turquoise, and then, so with your green brushes, you take off that little plastic cap and then swish it around in your water and it'll soften the bristles up. They put something called gum arabic into the bristles to keep them nice and straight to a point when they're manufacturing them. So here's your green and the yellow. It's a pretty bright yellow. And then the deep plum, just kind of like a dark brown to the mauve color. All right, so we're going to mix these in different combinations to get the colors in the painting. So we're going to mix some of the deep plum with the yellow. And this is going to give us like a, what would we call this? Like an ugly mustard color that we're going to use for the middle of the daisy flowers. So we've got that color. Then we're going to use the yellow and the green together. And that is going to give us a really bright, kind of earthy green color. We will use some of that green for some of the foliage and leaves in our painting. And I always tell people that it's good to practice mixing up different green colors. Now I'm going to do the green with some of the turquoise. Because especially when you're painting florals, there's a lot of green, obviously, in the leaves and stems and the foliage. And so to have a number of different greens at your disposal to use in a painting will make it look more interesting. So this is a combination of my turquoise and my green. Now the last color that we're going to mix is the turquoise and the plum, and it's going to be mostly turquoise, just a little touch of the plum. Whoop, that's a little too much. But actually, while we have it, this makes a nice dark neutral color. So we might use this color for some of the shadowy areas. So more turquoise than plum, just a very slight bit of plum, and this will give you a little bit of a darker blue, and we're going to use this for some of the little blue flowers that surround the daisies. You can see them right here. That's that combination. Okay, so we are going to jump right in, and we're going to start by using our masking fluid, which is in this bottle here. And what this does is it basically creates a covering on your paper that can be painted over, and it saves the white of the paper underneath whatever you paint on with this. So you're going to untwist your cap, and then you're actually going to pull this little part off. So just carefully kind of bend it until it comes off. And you're going to want to use this blue brush that I sent in your kit. You never want to use a nice brush with masking fluid because it ruins any brush. It's basically a glue. So just like you wouldn't use a nice paintbrush in a regular kind of glue, you're not going to want to use a nice brush with masking fluid. So I just have some cheap throwaway brushes that I keep to use when I'm going to use this. Okay, so we're going to start with this flower here, and I've kind of foreshortened it a little bit to make it look like it's facing this direction. So with my masking fluid and my brush, I am going to paint those petals. Now I'm going to kind of use my flat brush angled, and I'm going to paint the petals. I'm going to imagine this center, and I'm going to paint my petals around my center. So there's two, and it's going to be kind of hard for you to see it on this video, but if you can see the shiny areas, here we go. And I kind of like to go kind of fast. I don't want to belabor it too much, and also when you can speed yourself up a little bit, it gives it more of a fresh, spontaneous quality. So we're going to work on this flower now, and this flower is kind of pointing this direction, which means that the petals on the left side of it are longer than the petals on the right side of it. And this summer, when you're out picking flowers in your yard, pick some and hold it in front of your face and kind of turn it in different orientations, and you'll see how the length of the petals changes, and that can kind of help you visualize how you might paint your petals differently to give different views of a flower. So we've got these two large ones. Now I'm going to work on a third kind of in between them and higher. And these are going to be drying while I do this. It will be important to wait for your masking fluid to dry before painting in the background color, just so that you don't get any of the nasty glue in your nicer paintbrushes. So again, I'm just envisioning this center part that I'm not painting with masking fluid, and the petals coming out around it. So now I've got three, and I'm going to add a few more. I'm going to add one down here. It's kind of pointing up, so I'm not sure you can even see any of the back petals on this one. We're just going to have the petals coming out from the center like this. And that looks good. And I'm going to paint another kind of half view of a flower up here, and I think this one I'm going to try to make a little bit smaller. So something to keep in mind when you're painting anything really is that you want to show variety. That will make your picture look more interesting and more professional. So I have some larger blooms, and then I've got a smaller one here. So I'm trying to show variety and size with these, and I'm going to put a smaller one over here too. And again, I'm just saving the middle part of my flower. And I think one more, we'll put one more down here. The other thing you want to think of when you're painting is variety and balance. So I have flowers in this part of my painting. I kind of need one down here for balance. So I'm going to put one down here, and it's going to be facing kind of this way. Maybe we can see a little bit of the back petals. And there we go. Okay. So I'm going to let my masking fluid dry, and you're going to want to replace both of these little parts back onto your masking fluid, because if there's any left, you can, as long as it doesn't get dried out, you can still use it. So put your caps back on, and then you can stop now and pause and go rinse out this brush if you want to keep it for masking fluid in the future, but don't use it for regular painting. It's not a good one for that. All right. All right, so my masking fluid is dry, and I'm hoping that you can see where I've painted it on from the reflection of light here. So now is the really fun part. We're going to paint in the background. So with your turquoise, you're just going to fill your brush with the pure turquoise, and we're just going to paint it all around the flowers. Now, you can save the center of the flower and not paint it in white. Now, in this one I painted it in, and that's fine. It'll be a good experiment to show you what the centers will look like if you paint around them. So you can see I've brushed some of the color on, and then with just a brush filled with water, I can kind of feather it out to make it look lighter or darker in certain areas. So in this one, I'm going to save the center, and I'm just going to feather this one out, and I really like this little area here, so I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going around the center of this flower and then fading it out. Now, when I first started watercoloring, having a background like this with areas that were lighter and darker would have really bothered me. I would have wanted it to be perfectly the same color, but I've learned to embrace. I mean, this is one of the beautiful things about watercolor. So it's good to try to embrace it and just appreciate the different effects that it gives you. All right, so here's another one of my flowers, and coming down to this one over here. I'm going to try to save the center, but I'm going to get pretty close to the center because I want to get my blue in between any areas of the petals, because that is going to give them that definition that we want. And that's one of the reasons why we use this masking fluid in the first place, is to make it easier to get that definition. So now I'm coming down to the flower that's facing this way, and the top of it is like this. So I'm going to just sort of paint like a little top around it and not go beyond that point, so that I know where to stop. And then I'm just going to add this in like that. All right, so I've got almost all my flowers in here. There we go. And I've got this one down here left. I'm going to paint around the middle of this one, like that. almost done now. There's the center of that one. All right, and with plain water, I'm just going to sort of pull the rest of this pigment down. Maybe add in a little bit more right here. All right. So now we have to let the background dry, at least a little bit. While we do that, we can put in the first part of the center of the flowers. So I don't use the yellow straight up for the center, but you can. I kind of mix it into more of like this mustardy color with a little bit of the plum. So I'm just going to add to what I had done here before. And I'm going to put the centers in some of these. And I'm not going to be really precise. I'm just going to sort of go for it. And your color might bleed a little bit into the blue background in areas where the paper touches, but that's okay. It'll make a new color and it'll look kind of interesting. So here's my centers. This center I'm going to try to shape a little bit better. There. Now, this center up here, I'm going to actually try to lift out some of this color, I think. So to do that, you can take a brush full of plain water and just sort of rub it over the area that you're trying to erase. Get it wet. You're kind of picking the pigment up with your brush, and you can dab it off on a paper towel. And then at the end, once you've gotten most of the pigment off, you can take a dry paper towel and just sort of dab up the rest of it. So that works pretty well. That was a lot of pigment there, and still it took it up quite a bit. So I'm going to add in my yellow center there now too. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the basics of our picture. And now we're going to come back in. So the background is mostly dry. So I think while we're waiting for the centers and the petals, we're going to put the stems in. And for the stems, I'm going to mix a green, and I'm going to use one of these greens that I had mixed at the beginning and just add a little bit more green to it. So you can make your green more yellow or more turquoise. It's up to you. Or you can just try the straight green. All right, and I'm just gonna, with moving my paintbrush quickly, I'm just gonna paint some stems in. Now you can see here that this is bleeding a little bit because my background is still a little bit dry in those areas, but that doesn't really bother me, so I'm just gonna go with it. And this one. If you move your brush more quickly, you'll get a finer line. So that's another advantage to moving it quickly. And this stem is kind of coming down from there. And that's really wet there, but I actually like that, how that looks. Just put a baby stem in there. All right, and then to kind of help us out a little bit, I'm just going to paint in a few little leaves right off the bat. Now daisy leaves are actually a little bit serrated on the edges. They're kind of tall and thin, but they have these points. So an easy way to do that is to just make a long skinny leaf like this, And then with the tip of your brush, you can kind of make these little serrated edges, like so. And it's not perfect. It doesn't look exactly the same as this one, but I like it like that. All right. Now, we're going to add, this is mostly dry up here. So I'm going to start adding a few of these darker blue flowers. They're kind of like little cornflowers. I'm going to start to add some of those around the daisies. So I'm going to mix turquoise with just a touch of the plum to try to get it a little bit darker than my regular turquoise. There we go. So it's still mostly blue, just a little darker. And I'm just gonna paint in some of these little flower head shapes. So the reason I chose these little blue flowers is because they make a nice complement to the larger daisy flowers that have these large petals and they're big blooms. And then we have these smaller little blue flowers with kind of feathery petals. And these are fun too because you can kind of fit them around where you have the daisy. All right, I'm gonna mix up some more of this color. That's better, that's a little bit darker. Add a little bit more of that to these. And I'm just sort of fitting these little blue flowers around my white daisies, kind of where I think it looks good. So you might not be putting yours where I'm putting mine. You're just letting your eye guide you and tell you where the picture needs a little something. And then whatever areas we have left after this, we'll be filling with some leaves, and we can put in some buds if there's still a little empty area. So there's lots of little tricks that you can use to help you make your picture look really nice. So I've got one there, put one over here, I think. And I kind of like how this one is sticking up above the rest, so I'm not going to put any blue flowers up there, but I want to put a couple more in here, one here, sort of hiding behind this daisy a little bit, and a couple more. Maybe one here, and one down here. And you can always go back and add more. The only thing you can't do is take any away. So another thing to keep in mind as you're painting. Now for the centers of these, I'm just going to use the plum straight up. So I'm going to put a little bit of the center in while they're wet because I like how it bleeds out like that. And some of them are more wet than others still, so some of them won't bleed as much. All right. And I'm going to do the same thing with the centers of my daisies actually, but let's see. Yeah, we could do that now. Let's put a little circle of the plum right kind of in the middle of the daisy. Now this one, I'm going to need to put it more towards the top. We're seeing a half view of it. And then I'm going to come back with a just a plain wet brush and kind of bleed a little bit of this out. This one we're seeing mostly just the top of that. There we go. Okay, so this one is bleeding because it's still kind of wet, so I'm gonna try to get that effect with some of these other ones that were mostly dry. And then I'm gonna go back in again with a real dark brush full of that plum and just put the very darkest plum in the center of that flower center. All right, here we go. Fade that one out a little bit more. And now with my brush filled with like a really, really dark plum, I'm just gonna drop a little bit in the very center and let it bleed out on its own. And then once this is all dry, I can even put, because the watercolor will fade a little bit as it dries, I can even come back and put some more of that very darkest brown in there for definition. Okay, so we've got that. Now I'm going to add some stems to my little blue flowers. And I'm going to try for a darker green than I used on the daisies. I'm going to try for like the turquoisey green with maybe just like a touch of the plum to darken it and make it a little earthier. So I like that, and I'm just gonna put these stems in real quickly. And this one is kind of connected down here. Now you don't have to worry too much about making every little stem connect. Your eye is not going to try to figure out exactly how all the flowers are connected to each other. When you're looking at a picture, you're just kind of looking for it to be pleasing, and so don't worry too much about all the little flowers. The stems here we're really just using to fill up some of the space, and then we're going to be able to put some leaves off of these stems. All right, so I think those are looking good, and I'm going to keep using this darker green to put in a few leaves. So the leaves for these little blue flowers are kind of long, so I'm just going to put a few in where I think I need something, like so. Put one over here. And Eleanor, can you stop whistling? That. And put some up here. You can see I'm using the shape of my brush, the natural shape of my brush, to just sort of pull these leaves down. And sometimes I go back up to the top to get a nice fine tip. All right. Let's see, get some more of those leaves over here. Just put one here. Like how that one looks. Bend one down over here. And then maybe a couple up here. give a little more definition to some of these lighter colored areas of background. Put one here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave it like that, and then I might end up adding a little bit more as we go. So I'm going to go back to this lighter green, and you can see we started by putting in the white flowers, then we did the background, then we did the blue flowers. So we're kind of working the whole picture in different stages. So now I'm going to add some more of these daisy leaves with the serrated edges. I'm going to put one here. So I just start with the long, thin rectangle. And then I'm going to pull out these little serrated edges on it. Now, you could just leave it a plain, long, thin leaf without the little edges, because, you know, no one's going to tell you that you have to put the right leaf with the right flower. But for this picture, because we already have these long, thin leaves on these flowers, the little blue flowers, it's nice to have another type of leaf shape in here. And so that's a good reason to utilize that natural difference in the leaves. Variety. One more way of adding variety. Okay, I'm going to mix up some more of that green and try to do just a few more daisy leaves in here. So this is really going to be a very approximate daisy leaf because I'm kind of running into some of the other ones. So really I'm just getting like some of that green color in. And let's see, put a little one up here. Just a small one and try to get those little edges on it. Yeah, that works. That works. This I might have to come back in and fix. Not loving that. And I think I'll do another daisy leaf sticking out right here. Here's my little edges. Okay. This, I'm going to try to erase it a little bit. Not loving it. Here we go. We'll just blend it in. Now once this dries, I can go back over it and put a more defined leaf. So I'm just going to leave it alone for now. All right, so a few finishing touches here. I think we're getting close. I'm going to put in some little buds of these blue flowers for one more way of giving it variety and interest. So I'm going to put one up here, and the little buds are kind of like the little hairs are like a hat that kind of come out on the top of it, and then there's a little green bulb that attaches to the stem. So I'll put one there, put one over here, and then just put another one right next to it, right here. And then with my green, I'm going to add the little bulb and the stem. Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to add a few little grassy areas down here at the bottom to give the base of the picture some weight. So I'm just going to be real loose with these. Not put too many in, just a few. And then put some plum little dirt areas on the ground here. I like how that looks. And you can see where I touch it to the wet of those grassy strokes, it kind of bleeds into it. All right, so I've got those. I think on some of these leaves, I'm going to add a little bit of a vein pattern to these, real lightly. Put a little bit, moving my brush quickly to get those thinner lines. Just a few, not everywhere, just in a couple places. You're just giving hints of things. So I've given a hint of the vein. Maybe I'll put one in up here too. Just a little one like that. I like how that worked out. All right, so I'm gonna fix this leaf here, and then I'm really happy with this overall. So the last thing to do is to peel off the masking fluid, and the white paper will show up, and then we can do any last little finishing touches that we need to do. All right, so I'm going to carefully peel off my masking fluid here. And a good way to do this is by using an eraser. You can kind of grab the masking fluid. You can also just use your finger and rub your finger along it. Any paint that is not dry around it is going to possibly smear into your white paper. So just be careful. So you're just going to peel all this off. And this is really the fun part. Okay, so I have taken off the masking fluid on most of my flowers, and I smeared a little bit here. I'm not going to let it bother me because I don't think it ruins the painting overall. You'll see on some of the white petals there's like a big little dab of paint. If you just want to kind of dab that off with a paper towel before you try to take the masking fluid off, that can help avoid the smudging. Otherwise, just be careful. And you can see now I'm using my finger. I'm just sort of rubbing the rubbery part of it away. And you can even pull it sometimes. So I'm going to get the last of this off. And then we'll add just a few finishing touches to our picture. And last little petal there, and then these guys over here. All right. There we go. Okay. So overall, I really like it. I'm going to fill out the centers of the flowers a little bit more. And then I think I'm going to be done. So I'm just going to add some yellow here, some yellow here. Okay, so I added a little bit more of this bright golden yellow around some of the centers. And I'm really happy with this, so I think I'm going to be done. Actually, one more thing. I'm going to take a little bit of the dark deep plum and do just some tiny little dots around the edge of some of these centers, because I like those little areas on the daisy and I want to get that. Yep. And that will be my finishing touch. There. And a little bit well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun, and send me pictures of your final paintings. Bye, guys.